Florida, the Sunshine State. It is famous for beautiful beaches. It has no state income tax. It promises warm weather all year round. That sounds like a dream, right? Well, for home buyers in 2026, that dream is turning into a financial nightmare. Here's what nobody is telling you. In some Florida cities, home prices are falling by double digits. More homes are sitting for sale while fewer people want to buy them. But falling prices are not always a good deal. They are often a warning sign. Then there is the big problem, insurance. The average homeowner's insurance cost in Florida is now over $6,000 a year. That is about 4 times higher than the rest of America. In some coastal areas, it is more than $10,000. That is not a mistake. You could easily pay more to protect your home than some people pay in rent. The Senate Budget Committee has warned that Florida could face a housing crash worse than 2008. So before you lock yourself into a 30-year mortgage in the Sunshine State, you need to know the truth. You need to know which cities to avoid. These are the 10 worst cities to buy a home in Florida in 2026. Trust me, buyer beware. Number 10, Cape Coral, Florida. We start our list at number 10 with Cape Coral. If you have been following real estate news, this should not surprise you. The Wall Street Journal recently named Cape Coral the worst housing market in America. That is not one of the worst. It is the absolute worst. So what is actually going on here? Nearly 8% of homeowners in Cape Coral are underwater on their mortgages. So that means they owe the bank more money than their home is actually worth. That is more than anywhere else in the country. Home prices dropped around 10% compared to last year. Let me put that in perspective. While the national average home price increased by about 4%, Cape Coral went in the opposite direction. You are losing equity while the rest of the country is gaining it. Homes are sitting empty for an average of 84 days. The national average is just roughly 45 days. That means it takes twice as long to sell a house here than in the rest of America. On paper, it looks bad. In reality, it gets much worse. More than half of the homes listed for sale have had price cuts. Sellers are lowering prices just to get anyone interested. Inventory levels have exploded to nearly 9 months of supply. A healthy market has about 4 to 6 months. Cape Coral is drowning in unsold homes. Cape Coral now has one of the highest foreclosure rates of any large metro area in America. It is tracking nearly double the rate of the Florida state average. Does that sound familiar? It should. This is very similar to the pattern that started the 2008 housing crash. Now let's talk about the insurance problem. Cape Coral sits right on the Gulf Coast. Almost 90% of the city is exposed to storm surge in a worst-case hurricane scenario. That is nearly the entire city at risk, and if you are thinking you can just skip flood insurance, think again. Without it, water damage could destroy you financially. Experts warn about serious housing market problems here. They point to Cape Coral's significant price drop while the rest of the nation is growing. This city was ground zero for the 2008 crash. History might be repeating itself right now. You do not want to be the one holding the bag when the bottom falls out. The canals are beautiful, but the math is ugly. Inventory is stacking up like firewood. Builders are still putting up new houses even though nobody is buying the old ones. It is a classic supply and demand disaster. If you buy here now, you are catching a falling knife. Number 9, Lakeland, Florida. Next, we have Lakeland. This one might surprise some people. It is located between Tampa and Orlando, so you would think it would do well, but the data tells a very different story. Lakeland is ranked as the second most risky housing market ready to crash in Florida. Real estate experts have marked this area as being at very high risk of a downturn. Prices could possibly drop by double digits this year. The price trend for Lakeland shows a steady climb that peaked around early 2024. Since then, it has been falling steadily into 2026. What is driving this? Insurance costs in Florida have gone up by as much as 70% since 2020. This makes owning a home a heavy financial burden that is pushing away buyers. But here is what most buyers do not know about Lakeland. It is sitting in a dangerous geological area. Sinkholes are extremely common in Lakeland and throughout Central Florida. This area is known as Sinkhole Alley. They cause huge amounts of property damage every year. Polk County, where Lakeland is located, is a hotspot for these disasters. Many of the lakes in Polk County are actually old sinkholes filled with water. Those lakes could drain overnight if the ground shifts. In 2022, Hurricane Ian brought wind speeds up to 78 miles per hour. It cut power for nearly half the city for days. The storm knocked down over 500 power lines. Between crashing home values and hurricane danger, there is the ground itself. Sinkholes can swallow your house overnight. Let me tell you about Jeffrey Bush. He lived just outside this area. He was sleeping in his bedroom when the earth opened up. A sinkhole swallowed him and his entire bedroom whole. His body was never recovered. That is the reality of living on Swiss cheese limestone. Most standard home insurance does not cover sinkhole damage. They call it earth movement. You have to buy a separate policy. That policy is incredibly expensive. Many insurers will not even write it for older homes. So you are risking your life and your wallet. Lakeland is a risk most buyers shouldn't take. Number 8, Port St. Lucie, Florida. Next city on our list is Port St. Lucie. This city grew too fast. Now the problems are starting to show. Literally, it is a city that exploded during the pandemic. Buyers ran from expensive cities looking for affordable Florida living, but that dream is starting to fall apart. Forecasts warned that Port St. Lucie would see more price declines in 2026. The market score is well below the stable level. While some data shows stability, the risk signs are flashing red. There are fewer buyers than during the boom. There are longer waits to sell your home. There are more price cuts than in a normal market. This is where things get worse. The city grew faster than its infrastructure could handle. The population has grown to over 240,000 people, but the drainage system has not kept up. Recent storms left the entire city flooded. Roads stayed underwater for nearly 24 hours. Residents are asking a serious question. If roads are flooding now, what happens when the next hurricane hits? Home insurance in Port St. Lucie costs around $4,000 per year. That is far above the national average. It is still painful on top of mortgage, taxes, and flood insurance. The city gets over 50 inches of rain every year. It floods easily. Dozens of canals and wetlands around the city mean many homes were built in flood areas. And if you are thinking the water quality is fine, think again. And the city has been trying to connect homes to proper sewer systems for more than 25 years. About 11,000 homes are connected, but just as many old septic tanks are still in use. Those old systems are ticking time bombs. They are polluting groundwater. They are damaging the St. Lucie River. The county floods from heavy rain, tropical storms, hurricanes, and storm surge. Hurricane Irma, Hurricane Dorian, Hurricane Ian, and Hurricane Nicole have all caused flooding recently. Port St. Lucie was supposed to be the cheaper alternative to Miami, but between crashing home values and flooding streets, it is a trap. You might just be buying someone else's problem. Number 7, Ocala, Florida. Next city is Ocala. It is known as the horse capital of the world, but right now, this market looks like trouble. On the number of home sales in Ocala dropped by more than 15% recently. That is not a small dip. That is a market hitting the brakes hard. Homes in Ocala now sit empty for an average of 73 days before selling. Compare that to just 37 days last year. That is double the time. And when homes sit that long, desperate price cuts follow. What makes Ocala particularly risky is something most buyers never think about. Florida has more sinkholes than any other state. Northern and central Florida are hot spots. The soft limestone rock under the ground in Ocala has holes in it. Water makes these holes bigger over time. Eventually, the ground above can collapse. This causes a sinkhole. In 2018, 12 sinkholes opened up in one Ocala neighborhood at the same time. More recently, heavy rains caused a large sinkhole in a residential area. Now, here is the part almost nobody talks about. Most homeowner insurance does not cover sinkhole damage. Insurance companies call it earth movement. They will not pay for it because it is so expensive to fix. You need to buy separate expensive sinkhole insurance. And many companies can refuse to sell it to you if you are near a known sinkhole. The bottom line is scary. Ocala might look cheap on paper. It lures you in with low sticker prices. But you have falling sales. You have massive sinkhole risk. You have projections for far more extremely hot days in the coming decades. You could buy a property that literally falls into the earth and your insurance won't cover it. Imagine paying a mortgage on a hole in the ground. That is the reality of the Ocala gamble. It is not just about the economy, it is about the ground beneath your feet. Number 6, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Next city is Fort Lauderdale. It looks like paradise on the surface, but underneath there is a storm coming. Literally, it has beautiful beaches and world-class boating. It has exciting nightlife, but the reality is very different. Real estate analysts warn about Fort Lauderdale's huge rise in available homes. It is a troubling sign for future home prices in South Florida. There are now nearly 10 months of housing supply in Broward County. That is the highest level since the 2008 crash ended. The situation today in South Florida feels very similar to 2006. Back then, homes for sale had spiked, but prices hadn't really dropped yet. If that comparison does not scare you, you were not around for 2008. The Fort Lauderdale housing market is expected to fall further in 2026. The home price forecast score is extremely low. It shows it is clearly a buyer's market, but the housing numbers are just the beginning. The Miami and Fort Lauderdale area leads the nation in total property value value at risk. It is at risk of serious flood and wind damage. A home worth $600,000 could face insurance costs of $22,000 per year. That is not a mistake. Over $22,000 a year just for insurance. Most residents of Fort Lauderdale live less than 5 feet above sea level. They will face more and more tidal flooding. In April 2023, a rain bomb stopped over Fort Lauderdale. It dropped over 25 inches of rain in 24 hours. Streets turned into rivers. Cars went underwater. And this isn't ancient history. It is the new normal. Nearly all buildings in Fort Lauderdale are at risk of flooding. Then there is the condo problem. New laws require more inspections of old condos. They require money saved for repairs. This has caused an explosion of listings. Condo owners are trying to sell properties that few want to buy. The typical condo price fell nearly 10% year over year. Many owners face huge bills just to keep their building standing. Fort Lauderdale is facing a perfect storm. It is dealing with a housing correction. It is facing climate change. It is facing a condo crisis and insurance costs that could ruin the average homeowner. This is not the time to buy. Number 5, Fort Myers, Florida. At number 5, we have Fort Myers. 3 years after Hurricane Ian, Fort Myers is still recovering, and the real pain might just be starting. Jackhammers still echo along Fort Myers Beach. The storm made landfall with 155-mile-per-hour winds. It brought a 15-foot wall of water. Empty lots sit next to destroyed buildings. New construction rises beside the shells of what used to be family businesses. And if you are thinking of buying here, you should know the truth. The area isn't close to being fixed. Fort Myers sits in Lee County. It has seen some of the biggest home value declines in Florida. We are seeing double-digit drops since the 2022 peak. Reports show that home prices in the Fort Myers area fell by 11%. That is the biggest drop of any metro area in America. This isn't normal. It is the result of a $113 billion disaster. It changed who can afford to live here. Here is the hidden problem. Local real estate agents warn that many foreclosures could be coming. Many homeowners are struggling just to make their monthly payments. Insurance quotes more than doubled after Ian, and the people who used to work in tourism can't afford to live here anymore. They are the backbone of this economy. The town's character is disappearing. Fort Myers Beach used to have family-owned businesses. It had local restaurants and mom-and-pop shops. Hurricane Ian didn't just destroy buildings, it sped up neighborhood change that was already happening. Rebuilding a small hotel now costs over $4 million. The numbers don't work for small business owners. Meanwhile, 99% of Fort Myers properties face extreme heat risk. Summers will feel like living in an oven for weeks. The city remains open to future hurricanes. Each storm season brings new worry. Major employers are slowly rebuilding, but it will take years. Fort Myers shows what really happens after the news cameras leave. Even recovered hurricane areas can take a decade to truly bounce back. Number 4, Jacksonville, Florida. At number 4, we have Jacksonville. It is Florida's largest city by land area, but all that space comes with a hidden weakness that is catching up with it. The city takes pride in spreading across 840 square miles, but over 1,000 miles of waterfront bring flood risk deep into inland neighborhoods. You wouldn't expect flooding in some of these places. Recent data tells the story. Jacksonville just saw the biggest home price drop among the nation's 40 largest cities. Typical prices dropped over $16,000 year over year. Available homes have jumped from $2,000 to over $12,000 today. One local real estate expert said it clearly. There are now 5 times more sellers than buyers. But the bigger issue isn't today's market correction. It is what is coming. The St. Johns River runs through downtown Jacksonville. It has seen measurable sea level rise that is speeding up. Here is the scary part. The river bottom sits below sea level for 150 miles inland. That means rising seas aren't just a coastal problem here. It pushes water deep into the state. Climate experts think that historic flooding could happen much more frequently. The city's infrastructure shows years of delayed repairs. Jacksonville has struggled for decades with thousands of broken septic tanks. They leak pollution into waterways. The cleanup cost is estimated at $2 billion or more. Only a few neighborhoods have been fixed. Dozens of important buildings face flooding by 2050. Hospitals, schools, police, and fire stations are at risk. The city currently only sees a handful of extreme high tide days per year, but projections show that number could jump dramatically. It turns what used to be rare flooding into a regular problem. Foreclosure rates are climbing too. Jacksonville recently ranked among the worst big cities for foreclosures. About 1 in every 1,500 homes is facing foreclosure. Jacksonville handled past hurricanes better than the South. But its housing troubles come from something harder to escape. Its location puts it directly in the path of climate change. Number 3, Pensacola, Florida. At number 3, Pensacola markets itself as having great weather. What they don't mention is that this city sits directly in Hurricane Alley. The city promotes beautiful beaches and historic charm. They talk about living costs below the national average. What the tourist information doesn't mention is the terrible hurricane track record. Let's look at the numbers first. Home values have dropped nearly 4% year over year. The home price forecast score dropped to just 33 out of 100. This is deep into falling market territory. Nearly 30% of listings have had price cuts. The market once had bidding wars. Now it has identical homes with very different results. One sells in days while another sits for months. But Pensacola's real problem is its brutal hurricane history. Hurricane Yvonne in 2004 caused $13 billion in damage. It destroyed over 6,000 homes in Escambia County alone. Nearly every building at the Naval Air Station was heavily damaged. Then came Hurricane Sally in 2020. It dumped over 2 feet of rain. It flooded hundreds of the base's buildings. FEMA just updated the city's flood maps in August 2025. Many properties that weren't in flood zones before are now included. That means required flood insurance for anyone with a home loan. That is an extra $900 per year. That is on top of already expensive homeowners insurance. The location is harsh. Yes, Pensacola is surrounded by water on 3 sides. It has many low areas and gets heavy rainfall. Even properties outside official flood zones aren't safe. Nearly 20% of flood insurance claims come from lower risk areas. Over 13,000 residents already have flood insurance. The unstable market conditions show deeper uncertainty. Buyers and sellers are both careful. They are worried about insurance availability. They are worried about hurricane risk. As one local agent said, all bets are off. For military families, there is little choice. For everyone else, the question is simple. Is coastal Florida living worth the repeated gamble? Number 2, Miami Beach, Florida coming to number 2. Miami Beach. It is a flooding on sunny days, and it is only going to get worse. 1. There is something happening here called sunny day flooding. Water rises up through storm drains and floods streets. This happens when there is not a cloud in the sky. It happens now 3 to 7 days per year, but scientists think that by 2030 it could be 50 days per year. By 2050, what Hurricane Irma did could happen almost every year. This isn't a future problem. It is happening now. Sea levels at the southern end of Florida have risen a foot since the 1900s. The ocean takes back chunks of land during king tides. The soft rock underground beneath Miami Beach means there is no stopping the water. Seawater pushes up through the soil itself. The city has spent over $400 million installing pumps. But here is the hard truth. They are buying time, not solving the problem. The city manager described their plan as just trying to stay dry for 30 years. That is not confidence. That is slowly giving up. Now add the condo problem. After the Champlain Tower South collapse killed 98 people, laws changed. Florida required building inspections and fully funded repair money. The result is chaos. In many older high-rise buildings, HOA fees have jumped. They are now in the $2,000 plus range per month. Some unit owners face special bills of over $100,000. Nearly 900,000 Florida condo units are in buildings that must follow these rules. Many owners are being forced to sell or face foreclosure. The condo market has 14 months of available homes. That is deep buyer market territory. Typical condo prices have dropped below $250,000. Many buildings are not approved for loans. Miami has the highest housing bubble risk in the world. Typical income does not support typical home prices. The math doesn't work, and when federal flood insurance help eventually ends, the region faces serious pain. Seniors are being priced out of their own homes. It is a slow-motion disaster. Number 1, Punta Gorda, Florida. At number 1, we have Punta Gorda. This city has one of the steepest home price declines in the entire country. Condo prices have dropped even more. Homes now sit empty for an average of 162 days. They are selling for 7% below the asking price. In 2004, Hurricane Charlie hit Punta Gorda as a Category 4 storm. Nearly 11,000 homes were destroyed. Locals still talk about time as before Charlie and after Charlie. The town rebuilt. Then Hurricane Ian arrived in 2022. It was the third costliest hurricane in U.S. history. Thousands more homes were damaged. Insurance costs jumped, and this time the recovery stopped. What makes Punta Gorda's situation especially painful is who lives there. Charlotte County has one of the highest numbers of elderly residents in Florida. Retirees moved here for affordable waterfront living. Now they are stuck. They are in homes worth less than they paid. They are facing insurance costs they can't afford. They are watching their life savings disappear. The weather outlook offers no comfort. Every single property in Punta Gorda faces extreme heat risk. Summers will feel unbearable for weeks. on. Hurricane danger remains high, and unlike richer coastal communities, Punta Gorda doesn't have the money for protection. One waterfront home bought for just under $1 million later had its price cut multiple times. Bank valuation models suggest it is worth far less than even the reduced price. That is not a correction, that is a collapse. For a retirement community built on the promise of affordable living, the dream is over. It has become a money nightmare. If Cape Coral and Fort Myers are warning sirens, Punta Gorda is the crash. It is what happens when you ignore the warnings. Look, Florida isn't all bad. Millions of people live here happily. But if you are thinking about buying in any of these 10 cities, go in with your eyes open. Think about the real cost of insurance. Understand your flood zone. Research the HOA's money situation. Ask yourself honestly, can I afford to stay if another hurricane hits? If insurance costs double again, can I pay it? If my home loses value, can I wait it out? The sunshine is real, but so are the risks. Don't let the palm trees blind you to the spreadsheet. Your home should be your sanctuary. It should not be your greatest financial liability. Make smart choices and stay safe out there. Thank you for watching.